Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nishasanekar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Nishasanekar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nisha Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nisha Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Shasane Karma Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timuni Shasane Karma Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke Kodan Dagi Lo Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tukdan Dagi Yi Tenyerme Chikto Chingi Lo Makyuke Kodan Dagi Lo Makyuke Sundan Dagi Makyuke Tukdan Dagi Yi Tenyerme Chikto Chingi Lo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Sashipeki Chushimeto Tramare Ravalingashi Nidegempadi Sange Shintu Mikte Ulwarki Drokunanam Dashi Chepar Shoyedam Guru Ratna Mindrala Kam Niryatayami Sangye Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuch Dage Jinso Give Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Drupara Sho Sangye Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuch Dage Jinso Give Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Druparasho
in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I take refuge until enlightenment with the practice of generosity and the other perfections. May I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. At the beginning of the 11th century, Master Atisha Dipankara Shilankara, known simply as Atisha, he had been invited to Tibet. Now, let's not tell the whole story, which is very long, but the point is there was a king, very similar to the feudal system in Europe during the Middle Ages. Small realms, sm very similar to the feudal system, feudalism. And in this period, there was this king who wanted Buddhism to flourish in Tibet, had already arrived, but then it didn't really take hold. There was a lot of confusion, a little bit like many do-it-yourselves, let's say. Things that got mixed up a little bit, not so much clarity, a little bit here, a little bit there. And he thought that for Buddhism to really take hold in Tibet, they needed a realized master. And then there's a long story about inviting Tibet. And he ends up actually giving his own life as a kind of giving up his own life. To be able to invite Atisha to Tibet. He actually ended up in the hands of another king who was against Buddhism, and then went to his nephew and said, if you want your uncle back, if you want your king back, you need to bring back his weight in gold. And so they raised money. They bring lots of gold to this other king. They weigh the gold, and they say it's enough gold for his body, but without his head. He's able to talk to his uncle, and his uncle said, "My life is not worth much. I've given what I can give. It's more important for the teachings of Buddha to spread in Tibet. So please go to Master Atisha in India and ask him to come. That I'm offering my life for him to come." So a group of people actually go to India, At the time, it was very difficult to arrive to India. Many die along the way, also because the Tibetans, to even just the heat in India was very, very difficult for the Tibetans. Even today, I remember a few years ago, I was talking to some Tibetans in Tibet, and they were asking me where I live. They said, "Well, how low is where you live?" I said, "Where we live is about 600 meters above sea level." And they asked, "Don't you feel sick living so low?" And so, you know, those who go to those who were born at 4,000 meters above sea level, 5,000 above sea level, what happens when they go down to sea level? Pressure, their blood pressure drops, and they feel sick. So, and it's opposite for us. Um, and then there's there was a Tibetan lady who came to Tibet who came to Brazil in the 1930s or 40s. Minya, we dedicate also for her. It's a long story. It was a family of Tibetan Muslims in Lhasa, and at a certain point, her family received guests who came from the north of China and came to their house. And this man, he didn't have a very moral conduct, let's say, and so to not make problems for the family, given that they couldn't send him away, they gave him their youngest daughter to marry, and then he was a criminal. He leaves. I said I wasn't going to tell this story, but here I am telling it. So, and he had to escape one way, and he goes to Hong Kong, and then he was cheating people, and he was always escaping. Then he went to India, and then he had to run away from India. And in the 1940s or 50s, I don't know exactly, maybe the 40s, he escapes India and ends up in Brazil to get away from someone who wanted to hurt him. And she tells the story that when she went to India the first time, aside from the fact that this life with this man was very difficult, when they got to India and she started to feel hot, I mean, she had never felt hot in her life, so she thought that she had the fever, so she just kept putting on more and more clothes, her and her child, and then she started then she understood that it was a different temperature. And there's still her grandchildren living in Brazil. It's a very long story. At a certain point, her her husband dies. Anyway, it was, and the beginning of her life was quite the tragedy. Then it got better. Just my point is that going from Tibet to India in the 11th century was not at all easy. So to invite Master Atisha to Tibet, various people actually died. And in the same way, going from India to Tibet wasn't easy. And it was really seen as a land of barbarians. They weren't seen as friendly people or friendly land. So imagine getting to one of the most important monasteries in India at the time, Vikramashila, where Buddhism was already starting to decline a little bit at that time in India. And imagine asking with the most important living master, inviting him to Tibet. What do you think the answer would be? I mean, why would we send the most important and the best master that we have to a lost, dangerous land in the middle of barbarians, and without having any idea of how it would go? So one reason that they would bring offerings was also to show that they had the means to invite and to support such a master. So at the beginning, he didn't know if he should go or if he shouldn't go. And at a certain point, he does a retreat. He goes on retreat. if I remember, they were there for about a year and a half. They learning the language. It wasn't so easy. At the end, Atisha does a retreat, and during this retreat, he 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 understands that his life. Actually a vision of Tara, and Tara tells them, your life, if you go to Tibet, your life will be shorter, but it will be more meaningful. So he decides to go, but he needed the permission of the abbot. So the abbot goes to the nephew of the king, Chanchup, if I remember well, says, I give you permission to bring Atisha to Tibet, but you must swear that after 3 years you will bring him back. I don't, if maybe 2, maybe 3 years, and he accepts. At a certain point, just to give you the context of what I'm about to tell you. So after 3 years, so Atisha goes to Tibet. He's well. His teachings are incredibly beneficial. He's able to do a lot. And when he's about to leave, there were those his delegation to send him away, to say goodbye. So normally when an important guest arrives, the more important the guest is, the farther you should go along with him as he's leaving or arriving. So if someone's important coming from Milan, I need to go at least halfway to greet him. At the time, it was on foot. So you do more or less road, depending on the importance of the importance of the master. When Trungpa Rinpoche came here, for example, some went to Switzerland to get him where he was arrived. Rinpoche went to the border to bring him, and then there are those who were waiting for him here. So this is the traditional way of doing things. And so when the guest leaves, you need to also you need to accompany him or her a part of the way. And so this was the moment where he was saying goodbye. The 3 years had passed and he was leaving. Some would have gone all the way to India with him. Some were just saying goodbye. And in this moment, the responsible, the nephew of the king who had given his life, asked him, Great Master, after all these years, after these worthy teachings, can you please give us some last advice, one last piece of advice? And I like to contextualize, because this is where Atisha opens up his heart, and he's giving his advice for life, advice for life. And this is written, you can read it. And in one of these passages, he says, it's really beautiful. He says, in life, we have many objects of knowledge, many things to learn, many things to see, many things to know. And life goes by quickly. Sooner or later it ends. Life goes by quickly. So choose carefully where you want to put your energy, what you want to learn, what you want to do. Because the things to learn are never ending. The objects of knowledge are many, and the time available is short. And during the day we're distracted, and at night we sleep, and life goes by. And then Atisha leaves. Halfway through, there was a war, and it was too dangerous for him to continue. One made the trip, went to the abbot, and he brought him the text of Chanchup Lamp, which is the lamp that clarifies the path. Is the text that Atisha wrote. as he gave him this manuscript that Atisha had written in those years he was in Tibet. When the abbot receives this text, it's of extreme importance in Tibetan literature, in Buddhist literature, he was very touched, and he said if he had stayed here in India, he would have never written such an important manuscript. So I give back this commitment for him to come back. And in the end, he stayed for 12 years in Tibet. He was very direct, and these teachings that we're looking at come also from him. At this point, number 14 says, engage in the principal practices right away, right now. Now. Sowo means principal practice. So practice now what is the most important. In our life, we have so many things to do, so many things to learn. If we were to learn everything, as there's a universe in front of us. I remember when I was in Tibet, I went to my master to ask if someone could teach me Dradrupa, which is the science of study of the Tibetan language and Sanskrit grammar, and how the words are actually formed, how you from Sanskrit and then in Tibetan how words are formed. It's there are very few nowadays who actually know this subject well. And the abbot said, there is someone here in Tashilhunpo who knows this well. If you want, I will introduce you. But then he said, these are like the ornaments that one puts on, jewels, but the main body of the practice you already have. So decide, see how much time you actually want to dedicate to this, because life goes by quickly. I mean, there are things that are really beautiful to know, but how much space do they take up in our lives, and how beneficial are they? So we need to see what are our priorities. Is my priority to know or to transform, become? So before anything else, put into practice what is of most importance. And Trijang Rinpoche here explains how we understand what is a priority. What is medium and long term is high priority, and what's short term of a short term benefit is low priority. So if I need to choose, what is my priority? What is beneficial, short term or long term? Long term. So long term means the future lives, what comes after this, after death. Mid-term is between now and the end of our life, and short term is this this moment. So first of all, do what is most important. Also regarding spiritual practice, there are thousands of things we can do, but among all of those, what's the priority? Is to to develop wisdom, have a correct conduct, develop love, diminish our selfishness, and then there are thousands of things we can do, but this is the priority. Here it says, it's more important what one does for long term than short term, and transforming our mind is the most important. This is our priority. So in our daily life, when we have choices to make, and we do have choices to make often, we should ask ourselves, what is my priority? And if we just apply this rule, long term is more important than mid term, and midterm is more important than short term. For example, so midterm, what's more important, cultivating patience or for that specific situation to be resolved the way I want? I'd say that cultivating patience is more important. So, but there's this situation where this one said this and that one said that. No, but I'm not going to let go of my mid-term priority objective of developing patience. Like 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 when Shantideva makes that rhetorical question in the Bodhisattva Charavattara, what's more important for you, your inner peace or what others say about you? And they say, oh, my inner peace, of course, is more important. Then he answers, well, then why do you lose your inner peace when someone speaks ill of you? It means that we give more importance to what others think than compared to our inner peace and our balance. So we need to see what our priorities are and know how to apply them with clarity. And here within the priority, our priority is the development of our inner qualities. Seeing that these present moments pass. Today there's a problem. Tomorrow there'll be another one. Today is fine. Tomorrow it's not. There's someone talks too much to me. Someone doesn't talk to me at all. Someone doesn't want me. Someone wants me. Some things go well. Some things don't go well. Have you ever met anyone? Have you ever met anyone who doesn't have any problems, where everything goes fine? I mean, it's not about things like everything going well. It's about how we live these situations. So the priority is not how things go, but how we live them, how we face them. So this precept number 14 says, engage in the principal practice right now. Do the principal practices right away in what is a priority for you. Number 15.
Golok Micha. Golok Micha si traduce come non applicare una comprensione sbagliata.
Is translated as don't apply a wrong understanding. There are 6 types of wrong understanding. Wrong patience. Wrong taste. Wrong compassion. Wrong aspiration. And the wrong rejoicing. Let's look at it again. Wrong patience. Wrong taste. Wrong compassion. Wrong affection. And then after that, there's the wrong aspiration and the wrong rejoicing. These are qualities: patience, affection, aspiration, rejoicing, compassion, this the taste, the pleasure of things. These are positive things, but they can also be applied to the wrong context. And so instead of being helpful, they become harmful. So the first one, wrong patience, let's remember that patience, as we said before, is not about not getting upset. It's this ability to stay with something even in front of difficulties. One doesn't let go. It's this ability to work for something and not abandon something in the face of fatigue. Or so helping someone. So so maybe someone is not able to maintain this patience to help someone or to meditate, but instead can spend all night long in line for concert tickets. So have this ability to this determination for mundane things, but not for spiritual things. Maybe someone can wait for hours and hours in line to get into the soccer match. Nothing against soccer matches, but then doesn't have the patience of the half an hour for a meditative practice. This fact of having this the I don't think the word patience is not right. I don't think it's this ability to face difficulties without perseverance would be a better word. Have the perseverance for having perseverance for mundane things and not having them for spiritual things. That's the first wrong patience. The quality of perseverance is wonderful, but but has to be applied to everything beneficial. Maybe one has a tremendous amount of perseverance, but not for the things that are beneficial. So the first wrong, the first wrong, the first wrong understanding of patience is this one of perseverance. The second one is this ronyang, or taste, yang. So like experience the taste of something, of what one does. And this means having joy for life, having pleasure for what we do. And the wrong pleasure would be to take pleasure in things that are not good for us, to not find pleasure in the things that are beneficial for us mid and long term. Because if I'm someone who generates joy in things that are harmful, that's not good. It's possible to feel a kind of joy. It seems strange, but a joy for hurting others. It sounds strange, but I'll give you an extreme example. But we can also feel joy for things that are harmful to us. Habits and our ways of eating, or how we relate to others, where one cultivates not only dynamics that are unhealthy, but that are actually generating suffering for others, and one feels a kind of pleasure. So having pleasure in life, having joy in life is important, but it's important that this pleasure is virtuous and positive. The next one is the wrong compassion. The wrong compassion means where one directs compassion towards someone who's fine. The example that's given is, oh, look at that poor look at that poor man meditating in the cave for so many hours. He doesn't have a hot meal or a warm blanket. Instead of having compassion for someone who is full of anger and jealousy and lives an unhealthy lifestyle. So compassion should be towards a suffering, but mostly toward the causes of suffering, obviously we we project onto others. If for me, staying in a cold place it would be very difficult for me. Obviously, I project that idea onto someone I see in a cold place, but in that case, that person is really well in that context. Then we have that's wrong, erroneous compassion, and the next one is wrong affection. Wrong affection means it's when we have an attitude of affection and friendliness or closeness towards someone because that someone does good for us. I don't have affection towards someone thinking about his needs or well-being, but I have affection towards that person because that is a tool to help me feel better. So you treat me well, you do things that I like, and so I'm nice to you because by being nice to you, I keep you close to me. This is a little bit more delicate. So what's correct affection? Where I worry about someone else's well-being, not because I receive something in exchange. And that I get something in exchange is fine, that someone does something for me, but it shouldn't be the reason for which I do something for that person. This is the wrong affection. The next one. Wrong aspiration. It's important to have desire, aspirations. This ability to desire, to dream, but it's important to have aspirations towards what is virtuous and beneficial, because having aspirations towards what increases suffering and doesn't resolve it is not good. So having aspiration for power or for more money, for everything that comes from our obsession with self-gratification, etc. This is not a healthy aspiration. So this would be the wrong aspiration. And the last one, we have wrong rejoicing. Wrong rejoicing is rejoicing for non-virtuous actions instead of virtuous ones. I'll give you an example. Something bad happens to someone, and we say, good for him. And we're rejoicing. So he broke his leg, and we say, or we see someone hurt himself, and say, look, what everything that person did, good for him. It's a way of rejoicing for someone's pain. I remember there was a public figure at some point had a tumor in the mouth or the throat, and I remember that several people commented saying, with all of the lies this person told, good for him, and then that's really rejoicing for someone's suffering, and it's terrible. It's terrible, but it's something that happens and should absolutely be avoided. But so these 6 points show us what we need to cultivate. So patience, this perseverance, this pleasure in virtuous things, have compassion towards those who suffer and are taken by the causes of suffering, have affection towards those around us and thinking about their needs and their well-being, and have aspiration for what's virtuous and rejoice for what's virtuous too. These are the characteristics. This aspiration, this desire is essential. It's what pushes us, and rejoicing also gives us the energy to go forward. So in our life, rejoicing for what's positive and virtuous in our life, that gives us a tremendous amount of energy instead of complaining. So don't apply a wrong understanding. 16.
Nyamlela tangluk rejuk micha. Rejuk micha. Non es.
Don't be sporadic. And that's difficult. What I see in our reality, our modern reality that we live in, we learn many, many things. We feel benefit. We have our own experience. And then we just set it aside. And then every once in a while we go back to it. But the real benefit is obtained with constancy. That's where the deeper changes come. Like Rinpoche used to say, hard work miracle. This miracle of hard work, day after day, this attitude, just one meditation after meditation, gradually we get results and the transformations happen. Instead, doing a little bit here and then letting it go, and then I work hard, and then when I feel better, I let go. At the end, you don't get very far, even physically, body and mind. For a sportsman, it's said that I learned that those who train like on an Olympic level, let's say that one needs to train to run a certain amount, a certain distance for in a certain amount of time. So every day one runs and one tries to shorten that time. It has to be something gradual. And there's a rule, I don't remember exactly what it is, but those who do this kind of training, they know it well. And this rule says that if every day I need to do 1 plus, if I stop for 1 day, the following day, if I was at 5 and I wait and I skip a day, then the next day I should do 6. But if I skip a day and I pick up my training the following day, I don't get to 6, but I go back 1 to 4, not to 5, but 4. I was at 5, I skip a day, and instead of picking up at 6, I have to go back to 4. If I stop for 2 days, instead of 4, or instead of 5, then I go back to 2. The longer I stop or skip, the farther back I have to go. It's like this kind of this inertia that's moving in one direction, and if I stop, this force comes down, and then I have to really pick up maybe from 0 or halfway there. Our mind and body, they're like muscles, and they need to be trained. So if I change my behavior and I have an attitude that's not natural, it's not spontaneous, with gratitude and patience and concentration, and every day I do a little bit, and I'm able to concentrate well. But then I stop, I skip sometimes, then I skip a day or 2 days or some time, then I take many steps backwards. So it's said that it's better to be an ant and not a flea. This ant makes tiny steps but goes far. Instead, the flea makes huge leaps but then stays still. I've seen this also in the monastery. There were 2 very clear examples for me. One I knew well. It was a man named Gatok, which means the raucous one. And so a a fundamental part of teachings is memorization. I was never good at that. At a certain point, this boy said, I need to memorize a lot. And his objective, he had set a very high objective for memorization. And he would wake up before everyone and he had this very raucous, loud voice. And he would stay memorizing out loud from morning to night, even after everyone had gone to bed. He put in a tremendous amount of effort. And at the end of that period, he wasn't able to do everything. He wasn't able to actually do everything. And then he would just leave everything, be kind of depressed, and then wouldn't touch anything at all. And in the end, he left. He moved to the United States, and he ended up selling hot dogs on the corner. He up until a few years ago, that's what he was doing. Nothing against those who sell hot dogs on the corner, but he wasn't able to realize his objectives. On the other hand, there was a boy who got to the monastery, and he was just not able to memorize. His master tried in every way. I mean, the minimum for a child, when a child arrives, is to memorize four lines a day, like what we did at the beginning. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and other perfections, may I reach enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. And he wasn't able to do not even a single line. At a certain point, his master got really frustrated, and he took a little circle, a little metal circle, and gave him and then his nickname became Alon, which means metal ring. And so he told him to put the ring down on the paper, and then the words that were inside the circle, he would memorize those. But he worked so hard every day. He would memorize those few words that were inside, and he never stopped, not even for a day, in 30 years. Vacation, New Year's, he would always dedicate those hours a day to memorization. And after 30 years, he knew much more. I mean, he wasn't the best of the class, but he was able to memorize so much, much more than many others. And he became an excellent example of what constancy can do. So along our path and what we're seeing, we shouldn't have this need to push with strength. We should think about making constant small steps. So, we're not running the 100-meter race. We're doing a triathlon without the hurry of having to finish first. So do not be sporadic. We do something, we continue with that thing. That's also why the commitments that we take, if we want to take a commitment thinking we can do 10, then take that commitment to do 5, because that gives us, because once the enthusiasm wears off and difficult moments come, then we have more probability of being able to satisfy, to respect the commitment. So it's better to maintain an absolute minimum instead of thinking that we can do more and then leaving it. I remember my master again, Lakpala, once he told me, he was about 72 years old, 75, and he said, this practice of meditation, which was the sadhana of Yamantaka, he said, I recite it, I do it every day, and I have done it every day since the day I received the empowerment. When I was 17, I never missed a single day. I started understanding it a little bit when I turned about 50. So for 30 plus years, doing it every day, he did this sadhana without understanding it, and little by little he started to understand it, to find more and more taste in doing it. And he had great results at the end of his life by doing such. We can see this at work, with our studies, in art, in sports, and any any anything. What counts most is constancy, much more than the resources that one has available, or predispositions that we have for these areas. And this being sporadic is one of the greatest problems we have. You know, having constancy, working hard. You know, you know. So staying on something when it's pleasurable, when it's not, when it's difficult. I think one of the greatest problems we have is that we are very, very taken by sensory stimuli, as if we constantly need to be entertained. So, and to have new things. I remember Lama Michel Rinpoche, every once in a while he would give an empowerment, and people would say, "Oh, I've already taken that empowerment." Well, much better, then one should renew. But there was often this attitude, this attitude of collecting baseball cards or little figures. But it's not important to accumulate transmissions or teachings or empowerments. What's important is putting them into practice and bring all of that to our daily life. That's what makes the difference. The constancy, much more than these great intuitions or great efforts or energy. Constancy is much more important. Also, for this, when I see someone who gets close to Buddhism, who shows enormous enthusiasm, I say that's wonderful. But just wait a little bit. Wait, wait a little bit, because what is important is constancy. Because what can happen is one puts a tremendous amount of effort into something, it doesn't go well, and so one becomes the victim. It must be someone else's fault. No, a little bit, one step at a time. Number 17.
다르츠 오냐면서 골로 미차 레족 미차 너 골로 미차 레조 미차 털초 두장 도르 톡발 덜초 두장
Practice unflinchingly, which means go forward without doubt. Trisha Rinpoche gives the example. It says, make soup from stone. And this is a story that's told. That once there was a monk who went to a monastic university in Lhasa when he was very young. This has happened often. Maybe someone from the monastery that was very far, and he would go there to the village. Then they would take him then he would go to the monastery without ever going back home, and so this was very common. This is common. Maybe it's to spend 30 years at the monastery without ever going back. This happened to a friend of mine. A friend of mine, he actually walked back home 2 weeks in the snow to get back to his village after so many years. And then what would be common. So it would be common is that then there would be other small children that would want to then go to the monastery. So this boy had gone to the monastery, had spent 30 years there, had been really quite a scholar. And so he went to his mother's house after 30 years, and he found his mother there very poor. He was the only child, and no one was there to provide for her, and she didn't have money to buy anything. She couldn't work the land. She wasn't well, but she was full of faith. And someone had taught her, because this son asked her, how are you eating? She said, no, I make stone soup. He said, no, a monk came by one day and he taught me how to make stone soup. I take the stones, I put them in water, I boil it, and I recite these mantras, and a good soup comes. And in the Kangyur, actually, this collection of all the sutras of Buddha, there's a part called Sungdu. Sungdu means the collection of all. Sung, the translation is almost like enchantments. So they're like mantras, but much longer. So these kinds of spells. And there's a spell actually to make stone soup. So she was doing that, and she did it really well. I mean, her son, who was quite the scholar, and he was really touched. He said, "Oh, how wonderful that you're able to do that! It's incredible." And then she tells, she recites what she does, and then he says, "That's wonderful what you're doing, but your pronunciation of the mantra is wrong. You're not reciting it correctly. You need to do it differently." And then he gives her the correct pronunciation. And then he says goodbye. He goes somewhere else. And like a week or so, he came back to the house, and then he finds his mother very thin. He said, "What's wrong? I don't see you well." And she said, "No, my soup it's not working anymore. I'm trying to make it, but it's not working. It's not coming." And he understood that before she was so convinced, she was so full of faith and clarity, determination, that her soup came well. But when he explained the other way, he gave her doubt, and this uncertainty took away her ability to make the soup. So then he said, "Oh no, let me check again." And then he came back to her and said, "No, I'm sorry, I was wrong, you were right." So this tells us we shouldn't have doubt. Do things with certainty. Once we have researched something, found something, then we need to go for it. There are two other stories that are really nice. It's quite similar. And they both start in the same way, these two stories. They say that they're true stories, but I don't remember the names. They both start with a master who's about to leave for a trip. And as tradition wants, as the master leaves, his disciples that he lived with or from the temple, they were there making a line to greet him, to say goodbye. And as he was he's leaving, they ask him a question. This master asked him. So they ask these disciples in these two separate stories. They ask, "What's my life story? What's my life's practice?" And one master says, pray for a horn to grow on your nose. And then the other master in the other story tells the disciple who asked in this inappropriate moment, says, "Your nose looks like a rudraksha," which he says your nose looks like a rudra. This is like this porous seed. And so, and it's similar in both stories that the master comes back after 6 months, a year. These trips are long. He comes back, and when he comes back, they don't see their respective disciples. And then after a while, still not coming. They still don't see. And the one who said your nose looks like a rudra, time goes by, he doesn't see after 1 year, 2 years, and then one day that master got sick. He had a kind of inflammation in his throat, just full of mucus and pus, and he's not able to, no treatment is healing him. The inflammation is just not passing. And at a certain point, they say, "Oh, Master, we've tried everything. There's a healer. There's a healer who's become quite well known in around here. Shall we go and invite him?" They said, "Yes, let's see." And then this healer comes, very respectful. And then the master says, "I know him. Where do I know him from?" And so in silence, the healer is making his prayers. Your nose is like a Rudra. Your nose is your nose is. He starts in Sanskrit because the mantras are in Sanskrit, and so in Sanskrit he was reciting, "Your nose is like a Rudra. Your nose is like a Rudra. Your nose is like a Rudra." He had taken that as the practice for his life, and the master remembers what had happened. He understands what happened, that he made a joke and that he took it with total faith, and he recited with so much faith that he developed a ability of healing. And then this master, he couldn't hold back. He starts laughing so hard. He starts coughing from his left, and he coughs out all of this pus, and he's totally healed. So to say that when one does something with faith, and faith and certainty is very important. The other story where the master says meditate so that a horn grows on your nose. And he wasn't the first of the class, let's say. I mean, he really was the one who didn't understand. And so he wasn't going to tell him to meditate on the emptiness of his own mind. So he made a joke, also because it wasn't the right moment to ask, as he's walking into the hallway, what's the practice of my life? And so he came back and he didn't see that disciple. And one day he asked the other disciples, those who were more scholarly, more prepared, he said, what happened to that so-and-so disciple? And they said, "Oh, I haven't seen him for a while." And then after a while, they still don't see him. And then he asked, "Can you please go to his village and let's see what's happened to him, see if he's okay?" Remember, that's like walking 2-3 days, asking in the village by foot, coming back. They come back and they say that he's meditating in a cave in the mountain. Okay, go look for him. Go see what he's doing. Remember, another 3 days walking through the no GPS. It's like more or less in that mountain, in that direction. So they find him. And they come back 3-4 days later, and they say, "We found him. He's meditating. He's meditating in the cave with an enormous horn on his head." And the master starts laughing. "Well, okay, tell him to come back." Another 3 days they go, and he's not able. He can't get out of the cave. They go back, another 3 days walking. No, he can't get out of the cave because of this horn on his head. Tell him to meditate. So this is the instructions I give you now, that I give to him now. Tell him to meditate for that the horn disappears. And in 3 days, he's able to do it. It took him 3 years for it to appear, to grow. And in 3 days of meditation, it disappears. And when he comes back to the master, he was absolutely clear-minded. He was a different person. So at that point, he gave him indications on what to meditate on, and he was able to realize to have great realizations, much deeper and faster than other disciples. So these are examples of the great importance of faith and certainty, much more than knowledge. So here it said, practice unflinchingly. So when we're in our practice and we've already analyzed, like when we have, like for our spiritual master, for example, once we have found him, and it's said to wait 12 years, but once we have our master and we are given the tools, then we need to just go forward without doubt, because doubt is one of the greatest enemies of our practice. When I sit down to meditate and I'm thinking, am I going to make it, or no, I'm not going to make it? Is this the right way to do it? And that's just a lot of energy that's wasted. Instead, if I say, no, I'm going to do this, no doubt, then I really do much, much more. This reminds me about, when someone is sick, and there's an enormous difference. There's an enormous difference between following a treatment with certainty or following a treatment with doubt. A doctor during a conference explained once that they did a survey. They took many patients who were able to cure themselves of a certain type of cancer, but they were using completely different therapies, Chinese medicine, chemotherapy. And the question of this scientist, this researcher, was what was common to these patients. And the researcher was able to see that the only common denominator is that every patient was sure that the treatment they were doing, and they were all different treatments, was the right one. They were totally sure. And the same thing happens along the spiritual path. So the power of our faith, the power of our determination, the power of our trust, so we practice unflinchingly. Just you trust the path, go for it. You're not there saying, oh, maybe, who knows. This is really important. And on this, I remember Geshe Rinpoche, my main philosophy teacher, and he would say, studying too much sometimes is harmful. And he was a great scholar, and he said there's a mantra from the Sutra of Buddha, that this mantra, it's said that it multiplies the energetic force. And he said that he does it. He says that he does it, but he doesn't really believe it. And so he's thinking, oh, maybe it's just to he said that the power comes from certainty, and the faith of something. So by not having the faith in it, then it actually is weaker, even if maybe it does work. So when we do something, we do it with faith, unflinchingly. Number 18.
독춘이기 딱지안죽. 독춘이기 딱지안죽.
22 says, 18, release investigation and analysis. Don't remain on the surface of things. So investigation and analysis. Investigation is more general, and analysis is a more is a deeper understanding. So, okay, that I put all my energy into this meditation practice, but in the meantime, I look into it. How is it? What's the best way to do it? I deepen my understanding. It's like if if I'm going to follow a medical treatment, okay, I start it, but then as I'm doing it, I look into it and I don't stay on a superficial level. Try to understand it better. So we rely along our path, but we do have this ability to understand deeper, to analyze, and not just follow with blind faith. Following is important since when we entrust ourselves with awareness, but it's like saying I take the medicine because I trust my doctor, but now that I'm taking it, I also want to understand better what is it that I'm taking and why is it working, etc. So the part of analysis and investigation, in other words, it means study. It means dedicate time for our life to know more, to learn, to deepen our understanding. And it also means to and 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 so that knowledge, that understanding, it becomes our own and not just a repetition of someone else's words. It becomes ours when we really understand. When I understand, for example, when I understand that 2 plus 2 is 4, even if after they tell me it's not true, 2 plus 2 is 5, I say no. I have my own experience. I'm sure that 2 plus 2 is 4 for this, that, and this other reason. It then depends on what we mean by 2. But we're not going to open that door. Because in the end, what is 1? Okay, I just quickly, I just like this too much to not say it. What is 1? 1 is a unity. It's the union of parts, even in mathematics. So we can use a decimal system, binary system. So with 12, it can be a 12, it can be 10, 8, 60. So what's 1? It's a concept where that the union of parts makes 1. So what's 2? It's a concept. And when you deepen these subjects, this is absolutely beautiful. Why is 1 1? Because you can divide 1, can't you? It's how many parts does 1 have? Depends how you divide it up. Depends on what system you're using. So when we're within a system and we understand what we're doing, that becomes our own knowledge, and that we don't need to say, oh, because someone told me. No, I have my own reason. This process, it's not just about repeating what someone told us. We follow our practice, we follow our path, but we make that knowledge our own, and it's not simply repeating what someone else told us. Okay, now let's in another time we can really talk about why 1 is 1, but all phenomena are relative, and nothing exists independently of the value that is attributed to it, even the number 1. I mean, mathematics is absolute within a system, but if you take the starting point, if you take away the presuppositions of of why things are the way they are, that whole system falls apart. Number 19.
Yu ma goma, yu ma goma. Shen takparam, shen takpar, yu magom. Non essere presuntuoso.
Don't be boastful. Don't be boastful. In Tibetan, there are two different words, yu and yu, that are often together. In this case, it makes reference to yu, yu. It's to showing qualities that you don't have, trying to show qualities that you don't have. And in you, the another aspect is it's about hiding defects that we have. But in this specific case, it makes reference about not being presumptuous, to not feel better or superior to others. Because don't feel superior. Often, because you're helping. Often, when we're helping, we put ourselves in this position of superiority. Let me give you an extreme example. When a rich country, a rich Western country, goes to a poorer, a materially poor country, what's the attitude? What they go to help. Is the attitude to adapt themselves to that reality, or and offer help humbly? No, I help you because I'm better than you. I have more than you. Often that's the attitude. But if we go to the micro level in our daily life, when we help someone, when we support someone, sometimes the fact that I'm helping you feeds my ego because I'm better than you. I'm in this position to be able to help you. And sometimes there's arrogance, to feel better than others, more than feeling better. So even if I'm helping you, I'm not better than you. I don't think I'm better than most people that I've met. I certainly have wonderful conditions that allow me to be in a certain position. If I were in the condition of most people that have so much less, I don't know how I would react. I remember an episode that really marked me. I arrived from Brazil, and at the airport in Malpensa, there weren't any carts for suitcases, not even for payment. Or there were, but you just couldn't find them. And so for many years, the Brazilians could bring 32 kilo suitcases, and so the Brazilians got to Malpensa with with huge suitcases, and there weren't any carts. I mean, I had two, and I managed a little bit, but I watched this scene. There was a group of people, men, women, dressed very elegantly, well, and they were waiting for the carts. And then about 20 people and 5 carts arrived. they didn't punch each other because, I mean, it almost. I remember one grabbed and was pulling the cart. No, I got there first. It's mine. And and I thought to myself, and if this were food, what would happen if it was food that was lacking? It's not that we're better than others. We have better conditions. I don't know how I would be today if I had been raised in a certain context or had lived certain experiences or how I would face certain difficult conditions. So I'm not better than anyone. I just try to do the best with these good conditions better conditions that I have. Just to say that if we saw the fatigue, that the hardship that these migrants that we see on the around us, if we could see the hardships that they had to go through to get here, I mean, they're like superheroes. You know, they were sequestered, they were able to escape or have to go through on boats and trains and walking. I mean, the amount of effort and I mean, they're full of guys like this around us. To say, I don't know how I would have reacted or acted in certain conditions, but today we have better conditions. Today we have better conditions where we can reach out and lend a hand to others. We often put ourselves in this position of superiority, and if we do that, at a certain point, we want to help someone else because that nourishes our own ego. Be careful. Remember that when we help someone, I'm at your service, and we never know who's in front of us, who we have in front of us. There's a story of just a few years ago. There was a monk in Serpom, in south of India, and his name was Dimakara, which means crazy. He wasn't the most scholarly of monks. He didn't know the practices well. He worked his whole life and he played around with everyone. He said some stupid things. You know, he was respected because he got old at some point. And then at some point he died, like it happens to everyone. But the difference being he stayed in a meditative state during the process of death. And you know that because the person is dead. There's no more breathing or heartbeat, but at the center of the body it stays warm, and one's complexion stays bright. So you know, a master can stay 2 days, 3 days, a week. That's already a lot for a high master, and he was able to stay in that state for 2 months. And it was a huge lesson for the entire monastery, because we can say we never know who we have in front of us. This is a sign of a great it's a sign of being being highly developed. So we have conditions that allow us to be able to help others. Doesn't mean that we're better than anyone else. Number 20.
shen la nöba tramur contro sogi kolong madom. Non essere irascibile.
Don't be short-tempered. Don't let small things take away your balance. Don't let small things, what someone said, or I don't think that that's the way it's supposed to be. Don't let things like that take away your balance. It's quite clear. Pavio curto is what we say in Brazilian, which means there's like the don't like a bomb that has just a little bit of the part of the bomb that lights, Don't be that short part, of the bomb so that it explodes immediately. Don't be reactive. Allow yourself to think before you think. Instead of saying think before you speak, I say think before you think, before establishing a thought, saying this is like that. Think 3 times. So we say like think twice before you do something, or count to 3 before you say something. I say, think 3 times before you think, before saying this is like this. No, calm down. Also here, it says try to act with awareness and not react without awareness. There's an enormous difference between an aware response to something and then reacting without thinking about it. So we should respond with awareness and not be short-tempered. 21. Don't make short-lived attempt. Geshe Rinpoche explains, don't be like the summer sky. Then it rains, it doesn't rain, so that it changes often. Like, a small thing makes you so happy, a small thing makes you so sad. Don't be so that like anything will just let you drop the practice that you're doing. Look to have stability, put in roots, deep roots, create deep roots. I remember there was something that Lama Ganchen didn't like, something very cultural. And this is in the context of karma yoga and work, not so much for the spiritual practice. He saw this in different people. If you see that someone get angry and get upset, and then there's a kind of threat. If that one doesn't change, I'm leaving. And then Rinpoche would look, what? I'm more direct. I'll say, you want to go, go. You're here for your own benefit. It's obvious. If you say something like that, then one normally steps back. But this idea of, if it's not the way I want it, then I'm not going to do it. But are you doing it for your own benefit or for your own ego? Why are you doing it? If it's not the way I say, I'm not going to do it anymore. You don't want to do it? Don't do it. What I mean to say with this is, when we take a commitment, when we're doing our own practice, we need to be careful to not allow that commitment or that practice to be weak, to be fragile, or that just anything would break it. I don't know. I've seen in other contexts, for example, someone who decides, I want to be with you, I want to live with you. But the first time there's something that you don't like, I don't want to be here. And then I come back and then something else. Oh, I don't want to be here. It's important to have stability in things and not allow, not be so unstable, to fluctuate like this. Gacho
Gaccio duccio vuol dire
means it's so you're like summer weather, you know. So there's sunny, it's sunny, and then a big storm comes, and then it's stormy, and then sunny again. So don't let our spiritual practice be fragile, to be weak. I think we would say that like a lunatic. So we reinforce these commitments. We need to reinforce the presence of what we're doing. Also, even with related to a relationship with someone else, within a couple, for example, I take a commitment with you. I took a commitment with you. And I wasn't born yesterday to not know that along this path there are going to be difficult moments, right? Oh, I know. And so I take that commitment and I stay true to my commitment as long as I believe deeply that that commitment is beneficial. If I see that that commitment brings more damage than good, then I can give it back. But it's not because it's difficult that I'm just going to give it up. No. So it's something that is generally really important for us. We take a commitment. Even if it's difficult, we need to maintain it. And then our inner state, our stability, our peace, be careful to not be overwhelmed by small things, easily happy, easily sad. This reminds me of a particular period that I had. At a certain point, I felt that there was something that just I mean, I was fine, but I didn't, and I had a certain stability, but you know, beautiful things would happen. I'd say nice, and then bad things. I say, well, okay, well, sooner or later I'll get resolved. I was a little bit flatlining. And that time I remember I had this, I need a little adrenaline. And I was coming back from Locarno, no, from Lugano, where there's Gifa. I did a strange road, and the navigator took me onto a strange road. It was not even asphalted. It was like total darkness. I had to call the police to get me out of this this mess. And in all of this, I was in this kind of neutral state. And I remember I was there reading, waiting. And I got home. And the next day, I talked to Rinpoche. I said, "This can't be. And he said, "No, this is really good. This is excellent." And I was saying, "What?" He said, "This is what we call ronyam." Ronyam means the equanimity in taste. So good things, bad things, you experience them with the same taste. And on one side is good, but we need to be careful that it's not a depression that is seen like this. It's important that one lives it in a state of well-being and not in a suffering state. But as there was a part of myself that was looking for a little bit more excitement, a little bit more movement. I wasn't so well. But we need stable commitments and not be taken by great enthusiasm if I see something nice, and then fall into depression when something bad happens. you know. I see someone, sometimes it happens, you see someone who's happy and then half a word and then that person's sad. You know, what happened? Volatile. So put effort into not being volatile. Find a balance. A balance. So we're not too excited by beautiful things and not too down for negative things. Difficulties are there and we live them and we overcome them. Beautiful things are there, we live them and we enjoy them. But we just go forward without too many highs and lows. So try to not be to be volatile, to be taken high and taken low by small things. Remain stable. So here it's so don't make a short-lived attempt. So don't do things
So tenir mi chattes orche midum. L'ultimo 22.
Last one, 22. Don't expect gratitude. Don't expect gratitude means do your practice, your spiritual practice, patience, love. Why? Because you're offering your best, not because you want the other one to recognize what you're doing, not because the other one, not for the other one to thank you or see what you do or for you to be recognized as someone important. This is not easy. We have a little bit this need. It's absolutely normal, as we said yesterday, but being normal doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. So it's normal, but when we see that we have attachment to recognition, we shouldn't feel down. We should say, okay, I am where I am. I project my identity onto others, but this is an illusion. And let go. Don't give importance to it. And we see our motivation again in what we do and look at why we do what we do. Something very important in all of this. Remember that our motivation it's difficult for our motivation to be black or white. I remember once I had a positive motivation that was totally pure. I was 10 years old. And I made a prayer. And then the next day it actually came true. We were on our way to Tibet and people were saying, "Oh, I hear that people get sick because of altitude sickness." So everyone was worried about altitude sickness. And at a certain point, the day before leaving, we were doing the Dorje Shuden Puja. I didn't even know what it was, and I felt good. I liked it, and I made a sincere prayer. And I said, we're leaving on this trip. So if someone needs to be sick on this trip, let it be me. And I said it with a really pure intention. I woke up the next day with all the symptoms of high altitude, vomiting. I had a headache and dizziness and vomiting, and then the and then I remember when I remember that the flight didn't go, and then we got to this really nice hotel, Yakinyeti. It was really nice, but I was sick I was sick in the hotel. So I had that experience that one time and then never again. But when my point is, I really try to look often. Um, I look often at my motivation, and it's not always totally pure. I mean, there's a there's a there's a big part of our motivation that can be pure, and then there might be little shades of wanting to be recognized, wanting something in return. Oh, yes, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help. I'm going to help you, but then, let's take a picture together, and I'll put it on Facebook. Let me show what I've done. We need to. We shouldn't stop doing things that where we see that our that our that our ego is fed a little bit, but little by little we stop nourishing that part. So serving serving others is not about serving ourselves. I don't know if that's clear. Obviously, when we put ourselves at the service of others, we receive so much, and there's there's nothing wrong with receiving when we offer. But why am I doing this? I'm sure that most of us here, we do wonderful things for ourselves, for others, for the environment. And I also know that in the middle of that, probably there's in that motivation, there's a part that's beautiful and a part that's a little bit polluted, and that's normal. But we need to try to clean that part. And I'm just going to add something else quickly. It's normally along in our process of feeding our identity, our ego, to to look for to look for recognition and approval, because often to see ourselves, we use others as a mirror. And when someone says, "Oh, how wonderful you are, how beautiful you are," it's a little bit of a massage to our ego. We like it. But the problem today is that this receiving recognition and approval has has gone to a new level, both for recognition and approval when we talk about social media. So I see people that I think are really balanced, marvelous, beautiful people, and then they would say things to me like, "Did you see how many likes I've had?" I mean, what do I care? What do you? Why should you care? Okay, if you've posted something that could be of benefit to others, wonderful. But even there was a time when I made Instagram for the construction of the temple, and I posted some pictures, and I saw a dynamic that I didn't like, so then I just stopped it. Because it's natural in us to look for recognition and approval. But when we're doing a work where we're trying to avoid that obsession to obsession of self-gratification, and the problem in that approval and recognition create dependency, a kind. So the more I have, the more I want. And this becomes even more dangerous when someone is in a phase where they're establishing themselves, their own identity. For example, during childhood, adolescence. I'm shocked when I hear that 70 to 90 90%, depending on the country, that young people are depressed. It's much, 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 much more serious than coronavirus. And I'm not joking. So now I'm just going to close some parentheses here and let's get back to what we were talking about. We too have this weakness of wanting recognition, wanting approval. And we need to be careful about this because when we get into this loop of obtaining approval and recognition, it's not easy to let go. It creates a kind of addiction. And at a certain point, I don't do those things for those virtuous, beautiful reasons, the ones that that initial motivation. But instead, I want to be the person that is seen as being virtuous or beautiful, etc. And then there's also the problem of comparison. That's another one. So here where it says don't expect gratitude means we follow our spiritual practice. We make ourselves available. We offer ourselves. We put ourselves at the service of others because that's the best thing to do for ourselves and for others. And I'm happy for what I do. And it's not that I want to have anything back or have any recognition or receive any kind of anything in return, but in reality, one of the most beautiful things we can do is to put ourselves at the service of others, offer what we have. And some time ago, I was talking to a doctor, and when she came to Albagnano the first time, she said something that really pleased me. She said, I chose to come to Albagnano to visit to give appointments because I see this is a place, the place where it's possible to offer, where this exchange is possible, and I haven't seen this anywhere else because in our the dynamics normally where I give you this if you give me that, that really creates a negative dynamic. And it's beautiful to be able to offer, share, help. When I can put myself at the disposition of others to help is wonderful. I remember that in Brazil, but also here in Italy, it happened a few times where they've invited me to talk, you know, at a conference or within a company, and and the companies ask how much does it cost to have you come and speak? It doesn't have a cost. What do you mean? No, it doesn't have a cost. If you like to give something, you can make a donation, but it doesn't cost anything. And I see that they're shocked and they don't know what to do. And then we're not used to this exchange of heart to heart, where we give what we can give, and we give what we can give, and we receive what the other can give us. It's marvelous, where we put ourselves we make ourselves available for others, and something really beautiful with these kinds of exchanges. It's not an exchange based on quantity. It's not an exchange where I give you this so that I can get that from you. Or I give you this because you gave me that. No, it's I love you, and I'm putting I'm making my resources available to you, and you make your resources available to me, and everything's fine. We're not counting pennies. Oh, I owe you. I'm indebted to you because you gave me more than what I because you gave me more than what I gave you. No, we help each other, we support each other. But our point here is we do what we do without expecting anything in return. Offer to others, support the world around us, even in our spiritual practice, without expecting a return, anything in return, even within a family. I offer my time. I offer something because I love you. I wish you well, so I want to offer you the the best of what I have, and I don't even need you to understand what I'm offering. If you understand, good. If fine, otherwise not. That's difficult, isn't it? But the reason why it's difficult at the basis is because we have this not this unhealthy dynamic. We base our identity on what others think of us. So we constantly try to have a kind of, how can I say? Not reinforce, the affirmation on from others. Anyway, so this is how I think when we shouldn't compare ourselves to others, to see ourselves, because this can be positive and negative. It's positive because we're not constantly comparing ourselves and wanting to be more or less. It can be negative when one is 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 completely self referent and doesn't look at others to see how his behavior um, could be better. I remember, just to conclude this part, I remember once I was in Milan and I was supposed to take the train to come here. I had this strange negative habit to get to the train station at the very, very last minute. I would calculate how long it would take to get from the Kumpen Lamaganshan to the train station, and I had my seconds counted, and I never missed the train. But once the train, was leaving, the doors were closing, and there was a lady who was having a hard time getting on the train. She had lots of luggage, and I didn't see that there was time to talk to the lady, so I just grabbed her luggage and I put it on the train. And oh my goodness, I mean, this lady, imagine you're getting on the train is about to leave, and then someone that you don't even know grabs your luggage. She thinks that her luggage was being stolen. I mean, she said everything and more to me. And the first moment, you're upset. It's like, I'm helping you, and you're yelling at me. I mean, I thought I was helping her, but she didn't live it as such. And the reaction that I had, and when I was able, my first reaction was, oh, I'm not going to help anyone ever. No. Um, then I thought, I will be more careful in helping. I'll be more careful in helping. I'll pay more attention in the future. So, I mean, my intention, of course, was to help someone who I saw that was in trouble. Now, and I would do it again and again, but I would say, hello, let me give you a hand. But it's not that I'm not going to do it again because I didn't get thanked. So, don't have expectations. Dedicate your life to what you think is correct and virtuous, because that's going to feed our life. Because when there is this coherence that feeds feeds our life. This is one of the great qualities of Lama Michel Rinpoche. He was the only one that ever met that had such certainty of everything of what he was doing, even when the whole world was against him, and it and it happened. I mean, you know, he always listened, and sometimes he would change his idea. No, and so sometimes he would say, "Okay, yes, you're right, let's change." But if no one convinced him of the opposite, he would just maintain his point of view. And sometimes he had the whole world against him. Or there are two things in particular in his life where he had the entire community of Tibetans against him, not just on a personal level, but on an institutional level, public level. And then 20 years later, people would come and say, "You were right." And he never said, "You see?" Said simply, "Thank you." Never stopped doing that. But this was a quality of very few. But when we do what we think is right, when our heart is clean, let's just go forward without wanting anything in exchange. And then when something comes in the back, when we receive something, we say thank you, and we are happy for what we receive. But I'm sure that when we do things well, we receive so much more than we actually give. There's even a saying in Tibetan that says, when you act according to the Dharma, the conditions to do what you want to do will come down like rain. I could give many examples that back this up, but it's too long. But the beauty of what we're doing is that just being able to do something for you is enough. I don't need you to do anything for me in return. If I do, then I'll be grateful. It's not easy, but it's beautiful. So with this, we conclude these 22 precepts. They're not easy to put into practice, but instead of being guidelines, they're objectives to reach. And then the commitments are these guidelines that show us how we should act if we want to cultivate love and wisdom, if we want to face our selfishness and develop altruism. These are the guidelines to follow. To conclude, Geshe Chekawa says, my manifold aspirations have given rise to humiliating criticism and sufferings. So my desires, everything that I wanted to do for the I and the my, have given rise to criticisms and sufferings that I lived. But at a certain point, having received instructions for taming the misconception of self, the erroneous understanding of self, even if I have to die now in this moment, I have no regrets. It's not even if. Tanya means now. If I die now, I have no regrets, because I was able to find a profound state of satisfaction and balance. So for a long time, I looked for happiness through nourishing my own selfishness, this obsession with self-gratification, through the I and the my constantly. And the result of all that was conflict, suffering, of all kinds. Now, finally, I've received these instructions on how to tame this selfishness and transform my mind into a pacific and joyous mind based on love and gratitude, humbleness, and instructions on how to develop wisdom. So, so I'm ready to die. More than this, I can't receive. It doesn't mean I want to die. It means I don't expect anything more than what I've received, and I want to have a long life so that I can cultivate and grow even more. Cultivate. These 7 points of the mind training are something that, for me, sincerely, I've read a lot. Actually, not that much, but I've read here in Tibet, and I studied a lot. I've seen many types of practices, but this is one of the most valid tools and one of the most beautiful things of the Lojong practice, when it is practiced, put into practice, is that there are no excuses to not be able to practice it. And when it's applied seriously, it makes every aspect of our life meaningful. Every moment becomes meaningful. We transform ourselves on this path to be at service, to be of service to others. I don't know how or why we today find ourselves with this treasure in our hands, something that has been handed down for generation to generation as the most precious of things, that was kept secret for so long, not because it was something negative, but because it wasn't given to those who didn't have the didn't have the intention of putting it into the practice, like Atisha at the very end of the garland, the jeweled garland of the Bodhisattva. He says, "Don't talk about this to non-humans," but we non-humans, the actual translation would be, "Don't talk about this to people who are not." And what he means to say is, these teachings that are simple, they're difficult, but they're simple. They're not easy to practice, but they're simple if they're given to those who don't have the ability or the sincerity or intention to put them into practice, and they use them to nourish their own ego or importance. Those are the ones who could actually destroy the teachings, this lineage. Even Buddha himself said, there's a term that in Tibetan that says that the lineage of Buddha, the teachings, will be destroyed from the head, from those who represent them. So Atisha said, don't transmit these teachings to those who are not ready to put them into practice, because the quickest way to destroy this lineage is transmitting the teachings to those who will use them incorrectly. I'm sure that we're all here with a very sincere motivation, and not to use these teachings to do any with some strange mundane motivation. So I invite you to take this text as something precious, important guidelines for your own life. You don't have to take all 18 commitments and 22 precepts. Choose a couple, just a few, and try really bring them to your daily life, and take the commitment to follow them for 15 days, for 1 week, and then you can renew them. Try to apply these teachings to your life. That's why these texts should be read and reread, because the words, speech, speech is to direct our thoughts, and then if we don't do that, then we just leave it here. Tomorrow's Monday, and then we get back to work and we get back to our daily problems. Instead, let's look at our life and take the reins of our life in our own hands and say, I want to do this. I want to follow this path. I want to follow this practice. And many of us are already doing that. And I'm very happy to have shared this text, which is one of the most beautiful things that we can look at together. And I just invite you one more time to read it, to reread it, memorize the verses, apply it to your daily life, and have sincerity and determination, because no one is here to be Buddhist. I feel like I'm a Buddhist, but my objective is not to be a Buddhist. I don't expect anyone to be a Buddhist. Our objective is to transform our mind, to develop love and understanding, develop wisdom, be at the service of others, reach a state of peace for ourselves and for the world. And then we use the teachings of Buddhas as the path that helps us do that. And then so we say we are Buddhists. So that's not the objective, that's the means. There's a text that says, Buddha says that when you're in front of a river and you need to go from one bank to the other, find the best way to cross the river. Maybe someone will swim, or someone will take a boat, or someone will take a canoe. You find your best way. So find the best way to cross the river, but once you get to the other bank, don't be attached. Don't be attached to the means that allowed you to cross the river, and no one tool is not better than another. So the teachings are the tools that allow us to go from ignorance to wisdom, from a state of selfishness to altruism. And life goes by so quickly. Or maybe we're not dead, but we're half senile. Sorry if I say it like that. But the older we become, the less flexible our mind becomes. So it's never too late, but it's never too early either. So with unflinching, with determination, practice. This is what I wanted to share. I thank all of you for being here in these days, not just today and yesterday, but in this life's path that we're following together. It's time for our dedications. And let's make a special dedication so that these words don't remain simply words, but that they help us really transform our our minds and our behavior and our speech. I received these teachings from Kanchen Losang Phuntsok Rinpoche, the abbot of Tashi Lumpo in Tibet. I received also from Chiran Chukto Rinpoche. I received the transmission from Geshe Thupten Rinpoche. So it's a joy to be able to share with you. And now, before the dedication, I'll do, as we do traditionally, when you finish an important text, we read the first part, because it said that if we were to conclude completely with the end, then it's almost like there's not the interdependence to stop to see this text again. So at the end, we go back to the beginning, and that gives us the interdependence to see it again in the future. So just the first part we'll read.
택바 친보 로존튼드메 차와 슈크소 투제 친보라 차츠로 추군 춤바라 템베 치 제바 보체와 템바 맹아 뒤지 님보데 셀림바니 규바 잉 담가 쿠바 케베 치르 쳬기 체와 템바 더제니마 준시시 슌돌라서 셰바차 니망아 보데바디 전조 람도 규르와 잉
The 7-point mind training. Homage to great compassion. The S at the beginning of the text, Geshe Chekawa makes homage to great compassion, to love, which is like water. That's important at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end. And when a seed that represents a potential, water is important because it's water lets that seed germinate. Water is important during because it allows that that sprout to become a tree, and then it's important at the end because that water will help the tree give fruit. And love and compassion, which are as two manifestations of the same things, they allow us to germinate our potential of enlightenment, this feeling of love towards ourselves and others that germinates, that allows us to open up our path of spiritual development. It's the same love and compassion that allows us to walk step by step along our path. And once we've reached the final state of nirvana and of Buddhahood, it's that same love that that allows us to work for the benefit of all sentient beings. So homage to great compassion, and the essence of this nectar of secret instruction is transmitted from the master from Sumatra. Atisha received these secret teachings from Guru Saranadipta, who lived in Indonesia on the island of Sumatra, from whom he received these teachings and then brought to Tibet. It's time for our final dedications.
Kewa kuntu yanda lama dan rame cheki pela longche chen sadan lamge yunten rabzo ne dorje change kopa nyurtoba sho chancho simcho rinpoche ma ke panama ke gyurchi ke pa nyambra me pa yang kongne konto pe wara sho nimo dele tsendele Nime kuyan delekshin Ninsen takto delek pe kuncho sumke ngodruvat sol, kuncho sumke trashisho.
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Ripetete dopo di me.
Repeat after me.
Sem Chö Sudra, Chö Lam Tudra, Lam La Parche, Mion Warshon. Possa la mente diventare
May the mind become the Dharma.
possa il Dharma
May the Dharma become the path.
possa il
May the path be free from interferences.
May the mind become the Dharma. May the Dharma become the path. May the path be free from interferences. Grazie a tutti.
Thank you, everyone. Just remind you that tomorrow morning at 8:30, there will be teachings for anyone who wants to come. They're the Monday morning inspirations. And this Wednesday, I will be in Milan at the Kumpen Lama Ganshin. Thank you, everyone.